I am here with Whalen. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Holiness Today podcast. Anne is the Director of Church Relations at Olivet Nazarene University and also the wife of the DS Scott Whalen, Chicago Central District. So she wears multiple hats in the Nazarene ministry world. And I got the privilege of working with you about a month ago now at an event. And you guys were amazing up at Olivet, and I really appreciated it. And I'm excited for our listeners to get to know a little bit more about you today.
Great. Well, thanks for having me. It's fun to get to chat with you a little bit.
Yeah, I'm excited. This will be great. All right, so we'll just jump right in. Why don't you go ahead and tell a little bit about you, about your upbringing, your story of faith, how you got called into the ministry, or anything you want to talk about with that
Yeah.
story?
Well, I grew up in a Christian home, great Christian parents, and when it was time to look for schools to go to, we were not in the Nazarene church, but I knew I wanted to be at a small Christian university, and I had an older brother who was at Olivet, so that really was the only place I even came to visit. It checked off all the boxes for me. So I came to campus in 1998 and studied music education. And while I was a student at Olivet, I did a million things. I traveled in a ministry team and I was in the musicals and I was the yearbook editor, traveled with Orpheus Choir, and just got involved in a lot of things. And I was also working on campus. And the lady that I worked for had a son who was coming to Olivet in a couple of years. He's 2 years behind me. So she asked me to keep an eye on him. And we got married 21 years ago. So still keeping a close eye on him. He was church music and I was music education. So we had a lot of classes together and a lot of similar interests on campus. But he was obviously a church music major, moved into music ministry. So we finished at Olivet and I graduated, we got married, and we started pastoring at our first church all within 3 weeks of each other. So
Wow.
that was a wild month, May of 2003.
Yeah.
But Scott still had a year of school left. So we were commuting up to a church in Highland, Indiana, and we were in music ministry there. And then really we just really connected with the lead pastor there, and he invited us to come on full time once Scott graduated. So we moved to Highland, Indiana. I was teaching music at a variety of schools. And Scott was music and administrative pastor at the church. And then I just kind of helped wherever I was needed with a music background. Obviously, I helped Scott a ton, but then I did a lot of kids things and help with the teens and women's ministry and just wherever. And we were there for 3 years full time. Then we moved with our lead pastor to Sterling, Illinois, and we pastored there for 10 years. Scott was the executive pastor and the music pastor. I was teaching music, and then we started having our kiddos. So I stayed home with our kids, but after a few years of just staying home, I came on staff at the church to serve as the children's director. And then once our third child was, we have two daughters who are currently 16 and 14, and then a son who is almost 11. And about a year and a half after he was born, well, right at 2 years, we moved to Peoria, Illinois, and Scott was the associate pastor there, doing a whole variety of things. And I was on staff as the children's director at that church as well. And then in 2017, we moved to Bourbonnais. Scott was hired as the assistant district superintendent for the Chicago Central District. And we had been here for probably 6 months. And because of our connections at Olivet, I took a very, very part-time job at Olivet. And then it just kept growing. And after a couple of years in the role, I ended up just taking over the whole Department of Church Relations. And that's what I do now. I serve connecting Olivet with all of the churches on our field. And I run the ministry team bands. So I have 3 bands that travel for the university. And then I run our preaching ambassador program and I run our music ambassadors. So between all of that, I have about 75 students who work for me. And so that's kind of my ministry now, is really getting to invest in students in this portion of their life where they are just kind of transitioning from being teenagers to being adults and seeking out what God has for them in the future. So yeah, that's kind of full circle, started at Olivet 20 some years ago and have circled back around to work here now, and but serving alongside Scott on the district as well.
That's amazing. And I can attest, I saw you firsthand. She is fabulous at wearing all of her hats.
I love
And the
it. I think I
students
would get
love
bored.
you.
Oh, well, thank you. I think I would be bored if I only just wore one hat.
Yeah.
I'm built with I like to have a lot of things going on.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome.
We'll be right back with the rest of this episode. But did you know you can receive credit for listening to Holiness Today podcast? Holiness Today podcast episodes qualify for lifelong learning with the Church of the Nazarene. To register for lifelong learning, simply go to learning.nazarene.org. The Lifelong Learning Registry provides Nazarene ministers the opportunity to record and report their efforts to develop and maintain a pattern of lifelong learning to enhance the ministry to which God has called them. Every Nazarene minister is encouraged to engage in a variety of lifelong learning activities. The code for Holiness Today podcast is 64627 and will also be listed in the show notes. This code can be utilized for this episode and any previous episode you wish to listen to. Thank you for being a listener and sharing in the ministry of the Church of the Nazarene. Now back to the rest of your episode.
So how do you think, or can you tell us a little bit about how God has used your life story in your ministry, like through growing up into what you do now and through college?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, my dad was in ministry for the first few years of my life, and so I was a PK in that aspect. But ministry really burnt him out, and the people side of it, we all say ministry would be wonderful if it weren't for the people. The people side of it, was really stressful, and so I've always had a heart for pastors, just knowing that there is a higher calling there, but we are still just people. Pastors are just people like anyone else. So God has used all of my interactions at the different churches we've been and that sort of thing. Now that I'm working directly with students who are preparing to be in ministry, just helping to equip them for the road that's ahead. I'm very passionate about encouraging students to cultivate relationships with students here at Olivet so that when they go to a church, those are the relationships, the friendships that they go back to as a safe place. When ministry is hard, those are the people that they can go to. And I have a group of girls that we traveled together in a ministry team while we were at Olivet, and we still, our group chat is going. We're talking about all the things that are happening, and even 20 years later. But then also, especially with Scott in this new superintendent role, working with the spouses of those who are called to ministry,
Yeah.
and encouraging them to say, listen, yeah, maybe this is your spouse's call, but you're serving alongside your spouse, and helping people to see that they don't have to be someone else, that God called them and is equipping them with whoever they are. So we just had our ministry discovery weekend a few weeks ago with all of our first-time district licensed pastors, and I got to sit down with this time it was all wives sitting down together, but all of these women, 2 of them are engaged, like getting ready to get married, and just being able to say, listen, God is equipping you, and he's going to use those tools that he's built you with to serve in whatever church you end up with. So don't feel like you have to be somebody else. Don't feel like you have to fit into a mold that you aren't. And I think that's so freeing for these young girls to hear, is to just say, you don't have to be the, piano playing, Bible study leading pastor's wife that, maybe was quintessential 20 years ago. Lean into what God has for you and do that really well. And that's what he's calling you to.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow, how encouraging. That's great. That's so good. Okay, so how, with all of your hats and working at the school and with your husband, how do you balance your Olivet life, your DS life, your mom life? Tell us a
Uh,
little bit about that.
well, some days are better than others.
For all of us,
We,
don't worry.
yes, absolutely. Amen. I think our Google Calendar is honestly my lifeline. If I don't write it down and, just kind of live by that, Scott and I are both pretty diligent in just we're both systematic people and we think through systems and structures and things in place. And so we've raised our kids to be that way as well. So
Yeah.
now with our oldest one driving, she has a job, she's taking classes at Olivet. I still get the eye rolls, but every time she'll say, "Hey, I'm heading here," and I'll say, "Great, put it on the calendar." And she, they roll their eyes, and I just think it's not for you. It's not. I'm trying to keep, whatever. I
Yep.
just need to know where everyone is because I won't remember. So it's a lot of just open communication with our family of,
Hmm.
Scott and I usually sit down every Sunday evening and say, okay, let's talk about our week. What do you have? And sometimes we only get through Monday and then we have to revisit on Monday night and go, okay, let's talk about tomorrow.
Yeah.
But kind of scheduling things really well and then also learning to be present where you're at when you're there.
Mhm.
Um, I used to feel every email that came in the evening hours, oh, I'm just going to respond really quick. I'll just let me get this out of my inbox kind of thing. And now I've realized when I get into the office in the morning, you spend those first 30 minutes, knock them all out, and then you're good, for the rest of the day. You can handle what's coming in rather than taking that time away from our family.
Hmm.
So disciplining myself to do that has been really important too.
Definitely. It's funny. I've actually been trying to work on that myself because it's so easy. You're on your
Yes.
phone or whatever, you get an email. Oh, I'll take 2 minutes to respond to
Yep.
this. But I've been trying to, yes, give my evenings with my husband and kids and really just focusing on, okay, work can come earlier in the day or later after bedtime, but giving
Yep.
yourself rest time too is super
Yep.
important. So,
Well, and I think I'm a better mom when I do that,
yeah,
and
I
I'm a
think
better
I am too.
employee when I do that. When you just build these boundaries for yourself of, all right, nope, I can handle this later. Right now, the most important thing in front of me is my kids and they need that. And I
Right?
don't want them to grow up, with a very clear picture of the top of my head because I'm constantly head in the
Yeah.
phone texting or on the computer, whatever.
Mhm.
So yeah, those are good boundaries to build.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm a better mom and better at work when I'm
Yep.
not divided between both of them.
Yes. It takes time to switch in and out of those modes, I think
Yeah,
mentally. And I think as women, we're used to juggling a lot, but we don't realize the time that those on-ramps, like, oh, now I'm in work mode and I have to steer back in and your kids can feel that and the
oh
temperature
yeah.
of your home is impacted by it. So it's good.
Absolutely. Okay, so who is someone or maybe multiple people who have influenced or impacted your ministry?
Well, we had a couple that we pastored alongside with for the first 13 years of our ministry, Bob and Sue Hasselbring. And we started with them in Highland, Indiana, and they hired on. I mean, listen, we were 21 and 22 years old. We didn't know what we were doing. We thought we knew. We thought we knew. We did not know. But they just came alongside us and we commuted up for the first year of our marriage. And after a year, the church bought a house for us. So it was the church and then their parsonage, and then our parsonage was right next door.
Oh
And so
wow.
we just got to really live life with them. And we saw how real they were with people. Ministry is not it shouldn't be about putting on a face of somebody that you aren't. It should be about being your true self, who God has called you to be, and living transparently with other people. And they did that with us. And I mean, they have kids our age, so they could be our parents, and they really were another set of parents for us. Um, but just doing life in ministry with them was really great. And then, obviously my own parents, and just the ways that they are ministering to people and connecting and caring about people. And just my family is kind of an all-in kind of family. Like if we're going to do something, we're going to do it 110% and that sort of thing. So those have been just big influencers in my life.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love how you said that, ministry is being who you are and who God called you to be.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful way to look at it.
Yep, for sure.
Thanks. Okay, so what encouragement would you give to fellow women in ministry?
Ooh, okay. Well, first of all, you're doing better than you think you are.
Great encouragement.
I think we always think like, oh, I'm not doing enough, or I'm not doing it well enough, or I'm not doing it right, or I'm not, whatever. And we've had people, Scott and I both have had people who have come alongside us over the years just saying, you're doing better than you think you are. You might think that it's bad, but you're doing great. I think especially for people with kiddos at home, I would encourage you two rhythms that we have established with our kids and in our family very early on. Number one is having dinner together every night.
Yeah.
Finding just building it in. Like that's the non-negotiable time that you're sitting around the table every night. And I mean, lower those expectations. No one needs, a three-course meal and creme
Right.
brulee for dessert and, whatever. It can be simple. It can be easy. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's not about the food. It's about the being together and just looking at each other in the eyes and just sharing those stories. We now invite people into our home, and I love just sitting back and watching my kids entertain other people in our home. They're just talking to him and sharing with them because it's so very natural to sit around the table together and just laugh and joke. And I often think when my kids look back at their childhood, I hope that those are the moments that they remember. There are
Yeah.
plenty of moments of like for the 17th time, get your shoes on and get in the car. Those moments. I hope they don't remember those. I hope they remember the moments of here on the table and sharing the stories and just laughing and being together.
Hmm.
Um, because now, our oldest is a junior in high school, and I'm just telling you, the phrase the days are long, but the years are short is
Hmm.
so true. Like when your kids are little, it just feels like you will never be able to leave the house again without, picking up half of your earthly possessions and, forgetting someone
Right.
to do or, whatever. But now that, I'm watching my daughters, they're just racing off to high school and planning their own things and doing their own stuff. It just flies. And so when you have those checkpoints of, hey, dinner together every night, and I'll be the first to tell you now, especially with we've got soccer and we've got orchestra and we've got work and we've
Hmm.
got church and all the things. It doesn't happen every single night. But especially in those middle years when they are, before the kids start running off to things, really
Right.
establish that's really important. And then the second rhythm that we established is every night before your kids go to bed, I go in and I sit on their bed and I just talk, how's your day? How's it going? What's
Mm.
happening? Tell me about your life, whatever. And we have created this culture where especially my teenage daughters, which I didn't think would happen, but they want to tell me what's happened. It's just built in for them to
Yeah.
share what's going on and the good and the bad and the boys and the drama and
Yeah.
and the assignments and the stress and the homework and whatever. Um, it's just natural now for them to share that with me. And we made the conscious decision to put our kids into public school while they're, until high school with the intention that they would go to a private Christian university. Because I thought while they're under my roof, we want them to be exposed to things that they're going to encounter in the world so that we can
Mm.
walk through that with them. So our kids know there's nothing off limits. You can learn some words at school and not know what they mean and ask mom, and I'm not going to be mad that you
Yeah.
repeated to
Right.
me, or I'm not going to be angry that you heard this thing, or, whatever. I'm like, oh, cool. Let's talk about it, because we've just created that culture of nothing's off the table. It's all there, and it's all just encouraged for them to talk to us about. And that comes in those daily, when you think it doesn't matter, it matters. Just constantly sitting down, talking with them and then praying with them before they go to sleep. And it's harder as they get older. My 16-year-old stays up later than I do. And so
Yeah.
often it's her coming and sitting on my bed while I'm like, drifting
Yeah.
and listening. But it's worth it because that's super, super important.
That is beautiful. I love that. That is something I probably am going to stick in my hat for the future. Mine are still little enough that
They
we
are.
just
Yep.
do story time, but
Good. Yep.
I love it.
It's good. Yeah. And it's true, at that age, because yours are, toddlers, preschoolers, but
Hmm.
as they start getting older, they need that one-on-one time, with
Hmm.
you to just kind of hear, and you're not just talking and, whatever, you're establishing that rhythm of, hey, stuff's going on. I'm gonna talk to mom.
Yeah.
And you get to be the wise sounding board. And our oldest was going through something a few weeks ago, and she said, everybody's trying to tell me what to do, but all I want to know is, what do you think I should do? And that was
Oh,
like the
that's
biggest
amazing.
compliment, because she just,
Hmm.
we've built that, and I'm not here to spell out everything, here's exactly what you should do. I want to equip them to make their own decisions, and yeah, so it's cool.
That's great. And it's awesome that yeah, they're seeking that wisdom from you. Like you've built this culture for years and that's just their first go-to. I think
Yeah,
that is fantastic.
it's pretty cool.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll keep moving on, just a little bit left. Thanks for spending time with us. This has
Oh, this
been
is so fun.
fantastic. Yeah, I love it. So tell me, we're switching gears again back to Olivet. What's
Yeah.
one of your favorite things about being on campus every day?
Oh man, the students, obviously. I mean,
Yeah.
they are so fun. I so I'm in a rhythm of seeing, the students that I really work with, and they just become like my own kids, now as
Yeah.
I'm older, my kids are almost the same age as them. And I, the days where they'll text me and say, "Hey, do you have a few minutes to talk?" I'm like, I will clear everything. You come, come, let's talk about this. And the ones that say, "Okay, I need you to take off your boss hat and put on your mom hat for a minute. Like I have a question, whatever."
Yeah.
That is like the highest compliment that they could pay, to just say, like, I have something I'm wrestling with, and I trust you to tell me what to do, or what do you think, or whatever. And that is so fun. Like, that's because I know, I'm sure there are people 25 years ago when I was a student that I was plopping down in a chair in their office talking for much too long about who knows what. They just listened, and they, gave some wise counsel and then sent me on my way, and I'm better because of it. So now I get to turn that around and invest in these kids who are so talented and so just bright and ready for the future. And then probably my other favorite thing is when I get to I get to send them out. It's kind of a unique, I call it a revolving door. Like, it's a transient population at Olivet. You never get them for super long. Um,
Hmm.
but like when we were in church ministry, if somebody left the church, it was usually because they were moving out of town or something like that, and it was a really sad thing. Here, it's an exciting, like when they're moving on, you get to go, oh yeah, you're launching, you're heading on to the next big step. And then they'll call or they'll text or they'll email and say, hey, I got to use this thing that you taught me, or, whatever. And that's the funnest thing of
Yeah.
like going, okay, it's making a good difference. We're investing in the future, and they're impacting their churches and their lives. And that's a really cool part too.
That's so cool. I love it. Love it, love it. And they'll like look back on those memories with you and like take that on with them as well, like how much you've impacted them. And just I noticed when we were on campus last month, just everywhere we walked or everywhere we stopped by novice, students came up to you and were like so happy to talk to you. And it's just very apparent that you were a light on campus.
Well, thank you. I just love it. I mean, I'm obviously 1000% extroverted, and so people are just my thing, and I will park myself, places in the coffee shop or whatever just to do work, but really I'm just there to interact with people, I mean, yes, I'm getting work done. Yes, I'm, checking things off my list, but having the opportunity to just connect with students and be, a mom to them or be a
Mhm.
friend or be a listening ear or, tell them that they need to get a haircut or, whatever, like whatever it is. It's such a blessing. And I tell them that all the time. Like it's such an honor for me to get to work with them and that they would open up to allow me to be a part of their lives is really cool.
Amazing. I love it. Okay, so last question for you. This is just more of a fun one. Tell us a
Right.
fun fact about you. It can be a favorite hobby, your go-to snack, whatever you want.
Oh, well, okay. Hobby. This is funny. This is kind of evolving because I don't, this in the thick of motherhood, I I kind of lost all hobby. You didn't really have time for hobbies. You didn't have time for
Oh
like,
my
what do you
word.
do for
Yes.
fun? And, like I sleep. Like, I mean, it just, you kind of lose that. So I'm kind of now that our kids are at a little bit of an older age where they're able to be a little more self-sufficient, have spent the last few years asking myself that question, like, what do I do for fun? What do I love to do? And I love to organize large events. That's really fun for me. And you and I are both wired the same way. Like we're, kind of event planner people and we
Yeah.
like to coordinate things. So this fall has been, we've had our pastor spouse retreat, and then you and I ran an evangelism conference together, and then we've
Hmm.
had our discovery weekend for our district. This last weekend was our board of ministry event. It's just, all the logistics of things that are happening and tying those all together and then being able to collaborate with other people and make everything kind of tick and stay on task and track and whatever. That's what's really fun for me. So I do think I probably need to pursue a different hobby because
Not
that's
necessarily.
probably it's probably not like the best thing, but I don't know. And even, coming up like this week, we're having our teens at church are doing a turkey bowl. So we're gonna make a bunch of turkeys for that on Saturday. And then our small group is coming over for Friendsgiving Monday. So we're gonna do a couple more turkeys for that. And we have
Amazing.
family Thanksgiving, I love it. Why do something small if you can do it big, kind of
Yeah,
so
it's where
that's
you thrive.
it is, and it's what I love. I direct our district kids camp in the summer, and we partner with a neighboring district, and just those kinds of things where it's like big events with lots of moving parts and lots of people involved. That's my jam. So it's really
Amazing.
fun to be able to do that.
Well, I mentioned earlier, but shameless plug here, Ann Whalen is fantastic. So if you're doing an event up by Olivet, Chicago Central, she's your girl.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, so fun.
It was so fun working with you last month.
Yes, we had a great time. That was really
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to chat with me today, Ian. This was awesome, and I was really looking forward to this interview. So I hope that our listeners enjoyed it too. But thanks for sharing. A lot of what you said really resonated with me, especially in the mom life. So I really appreciate it.
Good. Well, thanks for asking me. And I hope I'm at, kind of the station of life where I'm able to pass some things on to some other people. And I still have plenty to learn and plenty to grow. But coming out of that thick of raising young ones, I know, man, that is a challenging season. So you are doing great with it and hang in there. And it's great to be with you today.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to the Holiness Today podcast. If you enjoyed this production and wish to hear more, visit holinesstoday.org/podcast or find us on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts.